Good morning. It's Saturday of a most eventful week in December of 2024. It is dawning on the MAGA movement of Donald Trump that they now hold power in the United States at this point. A massive transformation and fresh beginning for the country. No longer do patriots have the dismal fate of apparently shouting in the darkness. Instead, if they take up the torch now, they will be active participants in the nation's rebuilding and the gifting of a beautiful nation to the next generations. It is a psychological adjustment, a change in outlook, like looking at the Earth suddenly from space and being able to think about reordering virtually everything. The faster we adjust now to this new phase space, the more certain will be our victory. Trump gets it. The people of Mar-a-Lago get it, but some of our patriots have lagged behind, kind of in the old mindset of throwing spitballs at the oligarchs and hoping for something better. You got to realize that right now you very much control the power. So, in that context, I'll give you my best shot at addressing the events of the week. This is the Saturday Wrap, and I'm Barbara Boyd. First, on the nomination of Trump's game changers in the U.S. Senate. While Pete Hegseth's nomination as Secretary of Defense looked dead at the beginning of the week, based on the Psy-War and smear campaign conducted by the military-industrial complex, which presently controls the Pentagon, Pete fought through it, and the entire MAGA movement finally kicked into gear supporting him. What I liked best was Fox News host Will Kane's mobilization of over 100 Navy SEALs to visit wavering GOP senators personally. By the end of the week, Mitch McConnell's caucus of traitorous Republican Senate cowards were seeking cover, some of them still hemming and hawing, publicly still. Both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance sent messages of support on Friday, saying, "Pete is fighting, he deserves your support." That's so true, and we've got to win this battle. 4 Republican Senate votes can kill this nomination and, indeed, any nomination by President-elect Trump. The most likely culprits opposing Trump's nominations are those senators identified in one way or another with Senator Mitch McConnell, or identified in one way or another with the Senate Intelligence Committee, the heart of darkness. That is McConnell, Majority Leader John Thune from South Dakota, Mike Rounds from South Dakota, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, Susan Collins from Maine, Joni Ernst from Iowa, who wants the defense post herself, Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, and ever the swamp creature John Cornyn from Texas. We need to keep the heat on these people. With the exception of Collins, they all come from red states which voted for Trump by huge margins. Their potential perfidy and hypocrisy is underlined by the fact that they voted to confirm the current idiot defense secretary, Lloyd Austin, by a margin of 93-2. As usual for that point in time, seemingly now long ago and far away, Josh Hawley of Missouri and Mike Lee of Utah were the only senators showing an ounce of prescience about the disaster which has indeed followed. Again, we need to be part of the national mobilization occurring now and lighting up the Senate switchboard. Call your senator, Republican or Democrat, and let them know that they have to confirm Trump's choices. It's traditional. It's constitutional. Trump has a mandate. That's what the people voted for. Do not defy them again. The number 202-224-3121. Every senator has multiple state offices in your home state or their home state. You can find them by Googling your senators and going to their official websites. All of their in-state locations are listed there. On the war and peace strategic front, there were tremendously significant developments. First and foremost, a call took place on November 27th between Russian General Gerasimov and U.S. Joint Chiefs Chair Charlie Brown. I won't comment on the fact that the head of the JCS is now named Charlie Brown. but I find that very funny and significant. Since then, there have not been further attacks, storm shadows, or other insane attacks on Russia itself by the British or the U.S. Make what you will of that phone call, but I think it carried a warning. And it was the first such contact in months, if not years. Basically, what used to be the hotline was abandoned under Biden disastrously. Presumably, the Russians warned again about the meaning of their Oreshnik hypersonic missile strike, the nuclear-capable missile for which the Pentagon knows it has no defense to. At the same time, Tucker Carlson interviewed Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister. And if you want a good understanding of the Russian viewpoint, you should watch that interview. It broke the propaganda blackout of any real or truthful information made available to the U.S. citizenry about Russia and its ideas, its culture, and its history. Lyndon LaRouche used to emphasize that Russia is probably the only true Eurasian nation, with historical links to both Europe and emerging deep links to Asia. That strategic location and its massive raw materials resources is the reason the British dragged the United States into 2 world wars seeking to capture it. That British strategic aim is responsible for the current war in Ukraine and much else. In Syria, a new terrorist offensive against the Assad government is taking place. Don't buy the media characterization that it's a fight by quote-unquote rebels. If you understand the true nature of this, it is a huge scandal. Just as our government funds actual Nazis in Ukraine, we are participating in funding terrorists, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, and associated head choppers from days of old, in order to facilitate the downfall of the perhaps last true nationalist government in the Middle East, and its succession by the British-controlled Muslim Brotherhood. That's who controls the people now actually staging an offensive against Assad. These were Barack Obama's favorite terrorist manipulators. In this blitzkrieg offensive, which has already taken several Syrian cities, the terrorists have rebranded themselves as an entity called NTS and claimed to be qualified to be the new civil administration of Syria following the fall of Assad. They are using drones and modern weaponry supplied by both Turkey and Ukraine. Since Barack Obama set off the Arab Spring to reconfigure the entire Middle East in favor of the Muslim Brotherhood in 2011, the U.S. has supported Turkey and Qatar in fielding the terrorist forces to kick Russia out of the Middle East. It has a strategically vital deepwater port in Syria, which gives it its sole access to the Mediterranean Sea. And they also want to weaken, through toppling Assad, the influence of Russia's ally, Iran, who supports the Assad government. A factor in this is Qatar's plan to run a pipeline for gas and oil through Turkey to Europe, killing any potential for Russia to reinvigorate its economic relations with Europe on the basis of oil and gas. Israel also has a hand in this, as Syria has provided weapons and military support to Hezbollah, considered vital to the survival of this group, Hezbollah, as well as supporting the Palestinian cause. So the next time one of the Islamist terrorists who have entered the country now through Biden's open borders and attacks a citizen here, think about Barack Obama and Joe Biden as the perpetrators. Think about this current offensive as the cause. The terrorists have made rapid advances, but it now appears that Russia and Iran are going to enter the fray once again on behalf of Assad. Sergei Lavrov met yesterday with Iran and Turkey in Doha and called for an end to the conflict. What that means in terms of military reinforcements or pulling back the Muslim Brotherhood's NATO member, Erdogan of Turkey, seems to be a hopeful sign, but again, we'll just have to see. At the same time, since the Biden administration is doing everything in its power to screw up the strategic map, to bleed Russia to the maximum, the State Department and the National Endowment for Democracy are engaging in an attempted color revolution yet again in Georgia. One of the main things the Trump administration should do to drain the swamp is to dismantle this entire color revolution apparatus. The National Endowment for Democracy, USAID, and the various State Department propaganda and other coordination arms for this policy, along with the funders of NGOs and the numerous NGOs engaged in this activity, funded by Anglo-American institutions to do these coups. A piece in the American Conservative this week called for exactly this, an all-important strategic strike by the Trump administration to abolish the NED, its funding, and the entire color revolution agenda. So the Biden administration is just trying to tear up the world map and setting it aflame in order to make it extremely difficult for Trump to carry forward with his promise to make peace and its ancillary demolishment of the military-industrial complex. A dominant issue in the news this week was, of course, the assassination in Midtown Manhattan of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson ahead of a meeting he was to have with investors. What became clear from the massive internet reaction to the killing was the absolute rage felt by major sectors, huge sectors of the population toward the so-called healthcare industry. Many cheered the killing with stories about how United Healthcare left them without recourse in hospitals, either as patients themselves or with an elderly relative through their infamous policy of denying claims. Not exactly Obama's death panels, but producing a similar result. According to available statistics, United Healthcare, the largest healthcare provider in the country, as the result of the changes brought in through Obamacare, denies 33% of all medical claims submitted to it while reaping billions of dollars in profits. If Thompson was killed as a protest, that is obviously not a civilized response. The assassins seem to want that to be the conclusion of the police as to motive, putting written messages on the bullets which refer to United's reputation for denying medical claims. However, there are other possible motives. The company is under antitrust investigation by the Justice Department. The executives are also under investigation for insider trading. Thompson was living separately from his spouse. What is clear from all of this is the need for immediate action by the Trump administration to ensure that Americans have unfettered access to great health care, as promised by RFK Jr., and without the mediation of the bloated, speculative financiers in the health insurance or pharmaceutical industries or other assorted financier speculative middleman. The other significant item I want to comment on is the floating of the idea of blanket pardons for individuals who might be held accountable by the Trump administration for crimes committed under Biden and Obama against Trump and the MAGA movement. That includes Anthony Fauci, Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, and others. Those names are being floated by the Biden White House. While much of the blogosphere and social media have railed against this as an obvious abuse of power, it has an enormous upside. If questioned, the people pardoned cannot use their Fifth Amendment privilege to avoid answering fully and comprehensively any type of question posed to them. After all, they can no longer be indicted. Now they have to answer. And that's the whole thing here, which we need first and foremost. Transparency as to what we have suffered through the last 10 years. Transparency will lead to accountability. And accountability will mean actually taking on the oligarchs at the top who orchestrate all of this stuff, not the little minions who simply follows orders. So that's the key here. I think it could be a good thing. And that's probably a little bit heretical in terms of the drift of social media. Finally, Donald Trump is in Paris today to celebrate the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. following the devastating fire in 2019, which effectively destroyed this landmark to human civilization. It illustrates that part of Trump which defies the media characterization of him as an uneducated bore and obnoxious male reprobate. In reality, he is a lover of the classic opera and a lover of classic architecture. Remember, he issued an executive order to rebuild D.C. along classical architectural lines. Famously also, he went before the Satanists at the World Economic Forum at Davos in 2020 and denounced the pessimism shaping the entire outlook there by pointing to the construction of the Doma of Florence, a project which lasted decades and was only completed as men and women mastered new principles of classical building and geometry. Now, tonight, Ben Denniston will continue his class series on physical economics, how to order the economy on American system principles in order to achieve maximum productivity and advances and to assure a truly living wage and productive life for the working class, which is now the Trump constituency. Tune in. You will be provoked. If you can't watch it tonight, take some time during the week to go through the series which Ben is presenting. If you haven't already, go to Promethean Action and become a member. Join the dialogue as we move about and begin to rebuild the country. We are doing our damnedest to educate the American citizens now in motion in this fight as to the principles and policies which will ensure a sustainable victory. If you appreciate that, please contribute as much as you can. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you again on Monday to preview the coming week. We're winning. It's a battle, and we have to basically be engaged now. It's not time, like Cincinnatus, to go home and put down our swords. Let's continue fighting. We have a big chance of getting all these nominations through.
Thanks for watching. Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com.